Judge Robert Mitchell straightened his black robe and walked into the small courthouse. The morning sun came through the tall windows, making long shadows on the wooden floor. He had been doing this job for 15 years, and he was proud of his work. People in the town knew him as a fair judge who always followed the law. Robert was 52 years old with grey hair and serious eyes. He lived alone in a big house on the quiet side of town. Every morning, he drank his coffee from the same blue cup and read the newspaper before going to work. He believed that rules were important and that everyone should be treated the same way under the law. The courthouse was old but well kept. The wooden benches creaked when people sat down, and the smell of old books filled the air. Robert liked the peace and order of his courtroom. Here, everything made sense. There were clear rules, and he followed them carefully. On this cold Tuesday morning in February, Robert sat behind his large wooden desk. His nameplate read Judge Robert Mitchell in gold letters. He had already seen 3 cases that morning. A man who had not paid his parking tickets, a woman who had been caught shoplifting, a teenager who had been driving without a license. Each case was simple. Look at the facts, apply the law, make a decision. The court clerk called out, "Emma Clark, case number 4521. Emma walked through the heavy wooden doors at the back of the courtroom. She was 28 years old, but she looked older. Her brown hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a clean but faded blue sweater. Her jeans had a small hole near the knee, and her shoes were worn from walking everywhere. She carried a small purse that had seen better days." Emma's hands shook a little as she walked to the front of the courtroom. She had never been in court before, and the serious atmosphere made her nervous. The ceiling was high, and her footsteps echoed on the wooden floor. She felt very small in the big room. "Miss Clark," the clerk said, "you are here for a speeding violation. How do you plead?" Emma looked up at Judge Mitchell. He sat high above her behind his desk, looking down at her with calm, serious eyes. She cleared her throat and spoke quietly. "Your Honor, I know I was speeding. I don't want to make excuses, but I was rushing to pick up my daughter from daycare. They close at 6 o'clock, and if I'm late, they charge me extra money. I work 2 jobs, and money is very tight right now." Judge Mitchell looked down at the papers in front of him. He saw Emma's name, her address, and the details of her ticket. She had been driving 45 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. The fine was £300, plus court costs of £50. "Miss Clark," he said in his usual firm voice, "I understand you have responsibilities, but the speed limit is there for everyone's safety. You were 15 miles over the limit." Emma nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I know I was wrong. I'm not trying to get out of paying. Could I please have more time to pay? Or maybe I could do community service instead. I volunteer at the local food bank on weekends already." Judge Mitchell had heard similar requests many times before. People always had reasons why they couldn't pay their fines right away. His job was not to solve their personal problems. His job was to apply the law fairly to everyone. He looked at Emma, but saw only another case to process. He did not see the tired lines round her eyes from working 16-hour days. He did not see the worry in her face about how she would pay for groceries if she had to pay this fine. He did not see the love for her daughter that made her speed in the first place. "Miss Clark," Judge Mitchell said, "the law is the same for everyone, regardless of their personal situation. You must pay the full fine of £300, plus court costs of £50. That's £350 total. You have 30 days to pay." Emma's heart sank. £350 was more than she spent on food for her and her 5-year-old daughter Lucy for an entire month. It was also more than she paid for their small apartment's heating bill. She would have to choose between paying this fine and buying Lucy's winter coat. "Yes, Your Honor," Emma said quietly. She wanted to explain more, to help him understand. But she could see in his eyes that his mind was made up. She felt small and unheard. Like her voice didn't matter. Emma turned and walked out of the courtroom. Her footsteps echoed again in the big, empty space. She pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into the cold February air. The wind bit at her face, and she pulled her thin coat tighter round her body. Judge Mitchell watched her leave, then looked down at his papers again. He wrote fine, £350, 30 days to pay in neat handwriting. Then he called for the next case. He moved on to the next person without thinking about Emma again. In his mind, he had done his job correctly. He had followed the law exactly as it was written. He had been fair and consistent. This was what justice looked like to him. But Emma walked home that day feeling like the system had failed her. She felt like no one cared about her story or her struggles. She felt alone in a world that seemed to have no room for people like her. What Emma and Judge Mitchell did not know was that they shared a secret for 2 years. They had been writing a book together on the internet. They had never seen each other's faces or heard each other's voices. They only knew each other through words on a computer screen. Judge Mitchell used a fake name when he wrote online. He called himself M. Stone. Emma also used a fake name. She called herself E.C. Rivers. They had found each other on a website called Writers Together. It was a place where people who loved to write could find partners to work with. 2 years ago, Judge Mitchell had been feeling lonely. His days were filled with court cases and legal papers, but his evenings were empty. He had always loved reading books, and sometimes he dreamed of writing one himself, one rainy night. He searched the internet and found the Writers Together website. Emma had joined the same website for different reasons. She was working 2 jobs and taking care of her daughter Lucy. But she had always loved stories. When she was a little girl, she would write stories in old notebooks. Her mother would read them and tell her they were wonderful. Even now, when life was hard, writing made her feel better. On the website, Judge Mitchell wrote a message. "I want to write a book about hope and second chances. I am looking for a writing partner who believes people can change." Emma saw his message and felt excited. She wrote back to him, "I would love to write with you. I believe everyone has good inside them, even when life is difficult." From that first message, they began to work together. They decided to write a book about a young woman named Sarah who faced many problems but never gave up. Sarah worked hard to take care of her family. She made mistakes, but she always tried to do better. She believed in kindness and forgiveness. Judge Mitchell found that writing with Emma was the best part of his day. After long hours in court, he would go home to his quiet house and turn on his computer. Emma's messages were always waiting for him. She wrote about hope and love in ways that made his heart feel warm. Emma also looked forward to their writing time. After Lucy went to bed, Emma would sit at her small kitchen table with her old laptop. The kitchen was tiny, and the table was scratched from years of use. But when she opened her computer and saw messages from R.M. Stone, she forgot about her worries. They wrote to each other almost every day. Sometimes they worked on their book. Sometimes they just talked about their lives, though they never told each other their real names or where they lived. "Your writing touches my heart." Judge Mitchell had written to Emma just last week, not knowing who she really was. "You write about struggle and hope so beautifully. When I read your words, I feel like I understand what it means to be truly human. It makes me want to be a better person." Emma had written back, "Thank you. Your words give me strength. When I feel alone or scared, I remember that somewhere out there, you understand me. Writing with you makes me feel like I can face anything. You see the good in people, even when they make mistakes. You understand me in a way no one else does. Their book was almost finished. It told the story of Sarah, who worked as a cleaning lady, but dreamed of becoming a teacher. Sarah had to go to court once for a small mistake, and the judge was mean to her. But later, Sarah met a kind old man who helped her see that people could change. The old man learned from Sarah too, and they became friends. Judge Mitchell loved writing the parts about the kind old man. Emma loved writing about Sarah's strength and hope. Neither of them knew that their story was closer to real life then. They thought, 3 nights after Emma's court hearing, she sat at her kitchen table feeling sad and tired. Lucy was sleeping in the next room. Emma could hear her daughter's quiet breathing through the thin walls of their small apartment. The fine from the court was still on her mind. She did not know how she would pay it. Emma opened her laptop and logged into the Writers Together website. She saw that Aram Stone was online. She began typing a message to him. "I had a hard day today," she wrote. "Sometimes I feel like the world sees me as just another problem to solve, not as a real person with real feelings. I went somewhere today where I was treated like I didn't matter. The person who was supposed to help me was cold and mean. He didn't care about my story or my struggles." She stopped typing and looked out her small kitchen window. The street lights made yellow circles on the empty street. She thought about her daughter sleeping peacefully. Not knowing about their money problems, Emma continued writing. "But our story reminds them that everyone deserves kindness and a second chance. Even the person who was mean to me today. Maybe he just doesn't understand what it's like to struggle. Maybe if he knew my story, he would be different." 20 minutes later, Judd Mitchell was sitting in his comfortable study at home. The room was warm and filled with books. He had just finished reading legal papers when he saw Emma's message. He read it carefully, feeling sorry for his writing partner. "I'm sorry someone treated you badly today," he wrote back. "You are a good person who deserves respect. Don't let one person's coldness make you lose hope." Judge Mitchell felt angry at whoever had hurt his friend. He wished he could help her. He did not know that he was the reason for her pain. 2 weeks passed after Emma's first court appearance. She had tried everything to get the money for her fine. She worked extra hours at both of her jobs. She sold some of her old books. She even asked her neighbor if she could clean her house for a little money. But then Lucy got sick. Lucy was Emma's 5-year-old daughter, and she was the most important thing in Emma's world. On a cold Thursday morning, Lucy woke up with a high fever. Her little face was red and hot, and she could barely keep her eyes open. Emma touched her daughter's forehead and felt scared. Emma called her first job to say she could not come in. Then she called her second job and said the same thing. She knew this would mean less money, but Lucy needed her. Emma wrapped Lucy in blankets and took her to the doctor. The doctor said Lucy had a bad infection. She needed special medicine that cost £60. Emma looked at the money in her wallet. She had been saving it to pay part of her court fine. Now she had to choose between the fine and her daughter's medicine. For Emma, there was no choice. She bought Lucy's medicine and took her home. For 3 days, Emma stayed by Lucy's bed, giving her medicine and making sure she drank water. Slowly, Lucy got better. But now Emma had no money for the court fine. The 30 days were up. Emma received a letter in the mail telling her to come back to court. She held the letter in her shaking hands and felt afraid. She knew the judge would not be happy. On the day of her court hearing, Emma left Lucy with her neighbor, Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Johnson was an old woman who lived in the apartment next door. She was kind and loved Lucy like her own granddaughter. Emma walked to the courthouse with heavy steps. The building looked even bigger and more serious than before. She pushed open the heavy doors and walked into the same courtroom where she had been 2 weeks. Earlier, Judge Mitchell sat in his usual place, behind the big wooden desk. He looked the same as before, with his grey hair and serious expression. When he saw Emma, his face showed no emotion. He looked at his papers and called her name, Miss Clark. You were ordered to pay your fine within 30 days, according to our records. You have not paid anything. Do you have the money today? Emma's voice was quiet and shaky. Your Honor, I tried to pay. I really did. But my daughter got very sick, and I had to buy medicine for her. I used the money for that instead. I'm not making excuses. I just wanted to be a good mother. Judge Mitchell looked at her with the same stern expression he had used before. He had heard many excuses over the years. People always had reasons why they could not pay their fines. His job was to make sure everyone followed the law. Double quotes Miss Clark. You had 30 days. The court gave you time to arrange payment. Rules are rules. I'm adding another £50 to your fine for a failure to pay on time. Your total fine is now £400. Emma's eyes filled with tears. £400 was even more impossible than £350. She felt like she was drowning in a deep lake with no one to help her. Please, Your Honor, Emma said, her voice breaking. I'm trying to make something good with my life. I'm trying to become a writer. I have a book coming out soon. If you could just give me a little more time, I promise I'll pay everything. Something about her words made Judge Mitchell pause. A writer. A book coming out soon. The words sounded familiar, but he could not remember where he had heard them before. Emma continued speaking. I know I made a mistake by speeding. I know I should have found a way to pay on time. But I'm not a bad person. I'm just trying to take care of my daughter and make a better life for us. Judge Mitchell looked at Emma for a moment longer than usual. Then he wrote something on his paper. Ms. Clark, you have 2 more weeks to pay the full amount. If you don't pay by then, there will be more serious consequences. Emma nodded and left the courtroom. She walked home feeling even more hopeless than before, for £100 might as well have been for £1,000. She did not know how she would ever get that much money. That night, Emma sat at her small kitchen table after Lucy went to bed. She opened her laptop and logged into the Writers Together website. She needed to talk to R.M. Stone, her writing partner. He was the only person who understood her dreams and gave her hope. She saw that he was online and began typing. My book, partner, she wrote. I went to court again today. The judge was so cold to me. He doesn't see me as a person. He just sees someone who broke the law. I told him about our book, hoping he might understand that I'm trying to make something good with my life. But he didn't care. He just made my fine bigger. 20 miles away, Judge Mitchell was sitting in his comfortable study at home. He had just turned on his computer when he saw Emma's message. He began reading it, feeling sorry for his writing partner, as he always did. Then he read the words again. I went to court again today. I told him about our book, a book coming out soon. Judge Mitchell's heart stopped beating for a moment. Court today, a book coming out soon. Those were the exact same words Emma Clark had said in his courtroom just hours earlier, slowly. Like pieces of a puzzle coming together, the terrible truth became clear. His writing partner, E.C. Rivers, the woman whose talent he admired and whose friendship he treasured, was the same person he had treated so harshly in court. Emma Clark was E.C. Rivers. He stared at the computer screen. Unable to type, His hands shook as he thought about what this meant. For 2 years, he had been friends with Emma. He had encouraged her writing and told her she was a good person. But in court, he had been cold and mean to her daughter. How could he have been so blind? How could he have missed the person behind the case, Judge? Mitchell could not sleep that night. He lay in his big bed in his quiet house, staring at the ceiling. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emma's face from the courtroom. But now he also saw her words from their online messages. The two pictures did not fit together in his mind. He got up and walked to his kitchen. The house felt too big and too empty. He made himself a cup of tea and sat at his dining table. The table was large enough for 8 people. But Judge Mitchell always ate alone. He had never thought about how lonely his life was until now. He walked to his study and looked at his computer. Emma's message was still on the screen. He read it again, and his heart felt heavy. She had written about the mean judge who did not care about her story. That mean judge was him. Judge Mitchell walked round his house, thinking about Emma's words from court and from their messages. He began to see how different their lives were. His house had 5 bedrooms, but only he lived there. Emma lived in a small apartment with her daughter. He had a garden with flowers and trees. Emma probably did not even have a window that got sunlight. He went to his refrigerator and opened it. It was full of food. He had never worried about having enough to eat. When he wanted something, he simply bought it. Emma had to choose between paying a fine and buying medicine for her daughter. Judge Mitchell had a good job that paid him well. He owned his house and his car. He had money saved in the bank. Emma worked 2 jobs just to pay for a small apartment. She counted every penny and worried about money every day. For the first time in his life, Judge Mitchell really understood what it meant to struggle. He had always thought that if people just worked hard and followed the rules, they would be fine. But Emma worked harder than anyone he knew, and she still could not pay a simple fine. The next morning, Judge Mitchell went to work, but he could not focus on his cases. He kept thinking about Emma. When people came to his court, he began to see them differently. He wondered about their lives and their stories for days. He struggled with what to do. He was ashamed of how he had treated Emma. He had been cold and mean when she needed understanding. He had made her life harder when she was already struggling. He was afraid that if he told Emma the truth, she would hate him. She would never want to write with him again. She would never forgive him for being so cruel to her. The thought of losing her friendship made him feel sick. But staying silent felt worse than telling the truth. Every day, Emma wrote to him online. She shared her thoughts and feelings. She trusted him as R.M. Stone. But she hated him as Judge Mitchell. He was living a lie, and it was eating away at his heart. Emma continued working on their book. She did not know that her writing partner was the judge who had hurt her. She wrote about forgiveness and understanding. She wrote about how people could change and grow if they were given a chance. "I've been thinking more about the judge," Emma wrote to him one evening. "I was angry at first, but now I feel sorry for him. He must be very lonely to be so cold to people. Maybe he has never known what it's like to worry about money or to feel helpless." Judge Mitchell read her words and felt tears in his eyes. Emma was showing him kindness he did not deserve. Even after he had been cruel to her, she was trying to understand him. "I believe that everyone has good in them," Emma wrote, "even the judge who was mean to me. Maybe he just doesn't understand what it's like to struggle. Maybe if he knew my story, he would be different. Maybe if I knew his story, I would understand him better too." Judge Mitchell stared at those words for a long time. Emma was teaching him about forgiveness and compassion. She was showing him how to be a better person, and she did not even know she was doing it. He wrote back to her, "You are a very wise person. You see, your kindness makes me want to be better. How can you forgive someone who hurt you?" Emma replied, "Because holding anger in my heart only hurts me. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance. I think people can change if they really want to." Judd Mitchell read her message and knew what he had to do. He could not keep living this double life. He could not keep pretending to be Emma's friend online while being cruel to her in court. He had to tell her the truth. He was scared. He was more scared than he had ever been in his life. But Emma had taught him that courage meant doing the right thing even when it was hard. He made a decision. He would tell Emma the truth, face to face. He would apologize and try to make things right, even if it meant losing the best friendship he had ever had. He would rather lose her friendship by being honest than keep it by living a lie. Judge Mitchell sat down at his computer and began typing a message to Emma. His hands shook as he wrote, "You see, I need to meet you in person. There is something important I need to tell you. Can we meet at the coffee shop on Main Street tomorrow at 3 o'clock? I will be there waiting for you." He sent the message before he could change his mind. Tomorrow. He would face the truth. Tomorrow. He would try to make things right. The next day, Judd Mitchell sat at his computer with shaking hands. He had made his decision, but he was still scared. He typed a message to Emma, asking her to meet him at the small coffee shop on Main Street. He signed it R.M. Stone. But he planned to tell her everything when they met. Emma read the message and felt excited but nervous. She had been writing with R.M. Stone for 2 years, but they had never met in person. She wondered what he looked like and what his voice sounded like. She had always imagined him as a kind, older man who understood. Her heart. The coffee shop was small and cozy, with wooden tables and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. Emma arrived 10 minutes early. She wore her best dress, which was clean but old. She had brushed her hair carefully and even put on a little lipstick. She wanted to look nice for her first meeting with her writing partner. Emma chose a quiet table by the window where she could watch the door. She ordered a cup of tea and waited. Her hands were shaking a little from nervousness. She kept looking at the door, wondering which person would be R.M. Stone. At exactly 3 o'clock, Judd Mitchell walked through the door of the coffee shop. He was wearing a simple blue shirt and dark pants instead of his judge's robe. He looked round the room, searching for someone he had never seen before. When Emma saw him, her face went completely pale. She felt like all the air had been sucked out of her lungs. She recognized him immediately. It was the judge who had been so cold to her in court. The judge who had made her fine bigger when she could not pay. Judge Mitchell saw Emma sitting by the window and knew instantly that she was his writing partner. He had seen her face in his courtroom twice. Now he had to face the truth of what he had done. He walked slowly to her table, his heart beating fast. "Miss Clark," he said quietly, sitting down across from her, "I'm R.M. Stone, and your writing partner." Emma stared at him in shock. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She felt like she was dreaming a bad dream. You're the judge who," she finally said. "Yes," Judge Mitchell said, his voice full of sadness. "I'm the judge who treated you unfairly. I'm the judge who didn't see you as a person. I'm the judge who made your life harder when you were already struggling, and I'm deeply sorry." Emma's first feeling was anger. Hot, burning anger filled her chest. How could the man who had been so kind to her online be the same person who had been so cold in court? How could he have written beautiful words about hope and understanding while treating her like she did not matter? "You wrote to me about kindness and second chances," Emma said, her voice shaking. "But in court, you showed me no kindness at all. You made me feel like I was nothing." Judge Mitchell nodded. "You're right. I was cruel to you. I saw only the case on paper, not the person standing in front of me. I failed you as a judge and as a human being." Emma wanted to stand up and leave. She wanted to tell him that she never wanted to see him again. But something in his voice made her stay. She heard something new in his voice. Real sadness, real shame, real desire to change. Reading your words, knowing your heart through our writing. Judge Mitchell said, "I realized how wrong I was. You wrote about struggle and hope, about working hard and taking care of your daughter. But in court, I didn't see any of that. I judged you without seeing who you really are. I followed rules without showing mercy." Emma sat quietly for a long moment. She thought about all the messages they had shared. She thought about how R.M. Stone had encouraged her writing and told her she was a good person. She thought about their book and all the hours they had spent working together. "You hurt me," Emma said finally. "You made me feel small and worthless. You made me choose between paying your fine and buying medicine for my daughter." "I know," Judge Mitchell said, "and I'm sorry. I want to make it right, not just with you, but with everyone who comes to my court. You've taught me that justice without compassion is not justice at all." They sat in silence for a moment. The coffee shop was quiet except for the soft sound of other people talking and the coffee machine. "Making drinks. Tell me about your daughter," Judge Mitchell said. "Tell me about your life. I want to understand." For the next hour, Emma told him everything. She told him about working 2 jobs to pay for their small apartment. She told him about Lucy's dreams of becoming a doctor. She told him about writing stories late at night when Lucy was asleep, hoping that someday her words might help them have a better life. Judge Mitchell listened to every word. He told Emma about his own life too. He told her about his big empty house and his lonely evenings. He told her how their friendship had brought joy to his life. He told her how her words had taught him about courage and hope. "I want to change," Judge Mitchell said. "Not just for you, but for everyone who comes to my court. Will you help me learn how to be better?" Emma looked into his eyes and saw genuine remorse. She thought about their book, about the themes of forgiveness and second chances they had written together. She thought about what she had written to him just days before. "Everyone deserves a second chance. I think people can change if they really want to." "Yes," Emma said finally. "I'll help you." Judge Mitchell reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. "I've already cancelled your fine," he said, "and I want to do more. I want to start a program to help people who can't afford to pay their fines. I want to listen to people's stories, not just read their files." Emma and Judge Mitchell finished their book together. It was published 6 months later and became very popular. People loved the story of hope and second chances. More importantly, their friendship helped them both become better people. Judge Mitchell kept his promise. He started programs to help people in his court. He began to see each person as a human being with a story, not just a case to process. He became known as the most fair and compassionate judge in the county. Emma went on to write more books. She was able to quit one of her jobs and spend more time with Lucy. She and Judge Mitchell remained friends for the rest of their lives, always remembering the lesson they learned together. Their story reminded everyone that people can change, that understanding is more powerful than judgment, and that sometimes the best friendships come from the most unexpected places.